3 weeks ago, we watched the confetti fall at Levi's Stadium, and season 60 of the Super Bowl era came to a close. But even before that, 10 new head coaches had already been hired across the league. The combine has now come and gone, and shortly the pro days will begin, and where we turn our attention towards the draft, where ultimately the commissioner will step to the podium and say, with the first pick in the 2026 NFL draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Fernando Mendoza, quarterback, Indiana. The season may be over, but we are just getting started. Welcome to the Sunday Standard.
Welcome to the Sunday Standard.
G'day guys, I'm Anders. Each week here on the Sunday Standard, we'll break down what's happening around the NFL, coaching changes, roster decisions, draft movements, and then ultimately when we get into the season, breaking down what I saw in each and every game and what that all means going forward. This isn't about the headlines, it's about context. So let's reset the league and go again. The obvious place to start episode 1, 3 weeks removed from the outstanding Super Bowl effort between the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots, is to do a quick review. So that's where we will start this first episode. Congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks. They had an outstanding year. They're an outstanding organisation, and this is now the third Super Bowl they have won. The same year, a new pope has been elected, so read into that what you want. Now, just my few touch points regarding the Super Bowl. What did I take away from it? Look, the Seahawks were mistake-free the entire playoff run that they had. 0 turnovers, and look, I'm not saying that won them the Lombardi Trophy, but I am saying that it certainly helped. It certainly came down to their ability to play situational awareness and football and really understand what would needed to be done across 11 players on the offense and 11 players on the defense at any given moment, and they got the job done. Some interesting statistics that I did actually take away from, I guess, Levi's Stadium and the Seahawks. The Seahawks obviously played 2 games there this year. They had a total of 9 sacks and 4 takeaways there at Levi's Stadium in San Francisco, in comparison to the 49ers, 7 sacks and 3 takeaways in their 8 home games. So read into that as you wish, but that says a lot about the Seahawk defense as a whole. It's just an incredible unit, as well as, I guess, the 49ers having some continuous issues with injury. So, look, hopefully they run it back again healthy. The Niners, I think they do have a great organisation, a great squad of players, and I think they can maybe go a little bit better next year. Another also an interesting stat I did take away from the Seattle Seahawks and the 49ers at Levi's. Kenneth Walker had 3 20-plus yard rushes there at Levi's Stadium, in comparison to the San Francisco 49ers only had 2 for their entire season, which I found an amazing stat, considering you've got undoubtedly one of the best running backs in the league of, I would say, the last 10 years in Christian McCaffrey. I found that really an interesting statistic. Now, some further, I guess, takeaways from my standpoint. Sam Darnold is a winner. You can have a whinge about it. You can discuss that maybe he is not an elite quarterback. I don't think he is. Actually, I'll admit that. I don't think he is that top echelon of quarterbacks, but he gets the job done. He does what the team and the organisation needs him to do to get the job done. And you don't go back-to-back 14-win seasons across 2 different organisations if you don't understand what your job is on the team. So big shout out to Sam. I've always been big on him. I just guess coming out of college, where you've been so highly touted, you've won a Davey O'Brien, so you've been pretty much the best college player as a freshman, the first ever to do that. And then I guess you have the unfortunate circumstances that land you at the Jets, which is an organization that unfortunately just don't have the people in the organization itself to get the best out of their players. You've had chance after chance, and it just hasn't come into anything, unfortunately. So, um, I guess that really says a lot about Sam and his willingness and readiness to continue to fight and prove people, which there have been many wrong. So, and then his career since joining the league in 2018, he's done the 3 years there, or the 2 years there in New York, then shipped off to the Panthers, where again an organisation that has come a long way since moving off Sam and going down the Bryce Young path. Look, it hasn't been pretty, but I think they've certainly turned a corner this year, and I think Bryce Young will continue to get better. He is another young quarterback, which I think has a lot of time to show that he is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Again, not top echelon. I'm not putting in that Mahomes, that Josh Allen, that Lamar Jackson echelon of players. He's not up to that standard just yet, but I think he will get there maybe in another few years if they can build a team around him, which I believe they are starting to do finally. And then obviously he went off to San Fran, another organisation that had made up their mind, unfortunately for Sam, that they were going to go with Brock Purdy. Mr. Irrelevant, he had proved himself, and he did. He did prove himself, Brock, and congratulations to all the success that he's had, going from Mr. Irrelevant to quite a large long-term deal there at the 49ers. So then Sam played as a backup there, and then I guess he's gone to the Vikings, and another organisation that has already made up their mind. They've already made up their mind. They've decided, look, okay, JJ's missed his first year due to injury, but you've come in, you've won a 14-game season. Nah, that's not good enough for us, which I just found bizarre. We're going to put our future into a untried and untested kid in JJ McCarthy, and now look how that's going. It's kind of blowing up in the face. It'll be interesting to see what the Vikings do as an organisation. Do they surround themselves and surround this young kid and give him another chance this year to potentially prove himself that he is the future there at Minnesota, or do they bring in an Aaron Rodgers and sit JJ again for another year and give him a little bit of time to learn and get healthy and be what Minnesota thought they were going to have with him? Again, that'll be very interesting to see. Now, another, I guess, standpoint and a thing that I noticed from Seattle was that they didn't change their identity. They've always been a very run-heavy offense. Over the years, they just have been with obviously Kenneth Walker walking away with an MVP in the Super Bowl, that they didn't need Jackson Smith and Jigba to have that big 150-yard, 2-touchdown sort of game. They just handed the ball off, and Kenneth Walker, his yards after carry, his ability to find the gaps, his ability to then, if not, bounce to the outside and just yards after contact will win you games. If you can dodge tackles, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a tackle. So Kenneth Walker, huge game from him, outstanding. It wasn't a flashy game on both sides of the ball. Really, it really wasn't. And that's not to take anything away from the Patriots either. They're a young squad, they're a young organisation with Drake May at the helm. He has a lot to learn. He will find his way back to a Super Bowl. He will win one within his career. I have no doubts in that. He's a great player, but just this year wasn't that, and it showed. Silly mistakes in pivotal moments of the game, and it really, unfortunately, decided the game. Moving on to, I guess, a little bit more about Seattle. I don't want to delve too much into them, but there is obviously two big talking points coming out of the Super Bowl. Now everything's settled down. They've done their parade. They're relaxing in the off season, but you've got two big signatures that you do sort of need to go out and get, and that is the two people that I have pretty much spoken about outside of Sam, which is obviously the JSN discussion regarding his contract. Now he does have another year on his rookie deal. They've also got the player option that the team option that I imagine that they will pick up coming into next year to obviously give them another year to have those discussions. I don't think the signature will be put to paper this year. I think they will have mild discussions. They'll lay the seed, and I think at the end of the day, JSN will go out, have another banger year, probably another 1,600 plus yards, and then probably be in that market for $42 million a year across 4 years. So being the highest paid wide receiver in the league above Jamar Chase, and I certainly, and without a second thought, put to my mind that he is worth every single dollar. He is a game changer, but you definitely have to go out and get that signature sort of next year. Now, obviously, the other one is Kenneth Walker. He is a running back. We all know how that works. It's you pay them and then they get injured and then they just don't have the standard that you've paid them to, which is, I certainly think, a shame because we obviously do have a lot of outstanding running backs in the league, but they do get injured, unfortunately. They do take a lot of hits and it does come back to unfortunately bite a couple of organisations on the butt. So I do think he will get signed. I think they probably will look, if they can't come to an agreement, I think they do use their franchise tag on him. And then I think he's in the market of 40 over 3, 35 to 40 over 3 with probably 26 to 28 guaranteed. I think that's where his value sits. They do have depth. They've got Charbonnet there as well as their number 2. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I certainly think they both stay there in Seattle. Now, moving on to our sort of next section of the episode. If you've made it this far, thank you. I really appreciate the support. We move on to the free agency market. One of the, obviously, something that we touch on a lot throughout this period of time with no football leading up to the draft. A lot of changes, roster changes being made, and it reshapes identities about organisations. So I would like to first touch on the wide receivers in this sort of free agency that are looking for new homes. Obviously not all of them, but I'll touch on a few that I've got here. They're not super elite, but there are players in here that can change a game and bring a lot of experience to an organisation. So I certainly think there are certainly a few younger teams that would be correct fits for these players. So let's get into it. Number one is obviously George Pickens. He's had an outstanding year there at Dallas. Really picking up the wide receiver 1 slot with CD going down with injury sort of that halfway through the season, early on in the season, then and again later on. He certainly stepped up to the plate and showed his value there. I think he stays in Dallas. They used the tag on him. The last big wide receiver they used the tag on was Des Bryant back in the mid 2010s. So I think they pick him up on the franchise tag. They pay him that $28 million to keep him. Does that have cap implications? Look, probably you're then paying probably about a third of your cap on Dak, CD, and George, probably even a little bit more than a third. So does have implications, but we've just, I guess, Jerry Jones is known for doing some interesting decisions. So we will see what he does with George, but I think he stays there in Dallas. Wan'Dale Robinson Jr. Is he junior? I think he's junior. His production across the country up in the New York Giants last year was outstanding, especially with Neighbours going down with the injury. He really stepped up. Again, He's not a true wide receiver one. I think he is a handy second. I think with Neighbours coming back from injury this year, he stays. Obviously, you've got Harbaugh, you've got Nagy coming in as your offensive coach. I think they sit down and have that conversation. Where do they see the production coming out of these two guys the most? But I think he also stays. His internal value for the organisation is far greater than anything they will get for him on the market. So that will be another interesting one. One of the biggest ones that I was surprised to see that go on the market as a free agent was absolutely Mike Evans. The absolutely blueprint of consistency as a wide receiver. Obviously, last year tarnished with injury, unfortunately, not able to continue that incredible streak of 1,000+ yards throughout his career, but a bit saddened to understand that Tampa aren't looking to hold him and give him another, I guess, short term deal, probably in that 1 to 2 years, $12 million mark. So I would love to see Mike Evans go to a young team like a Raiders or a Tennessee and just help grow either realistically Fernando Mendoza at the Raiders or a sophomore Cam Ward, who I think if they surround him or give him a decent option at the wide receiver this year, Cam Ward has a big sophomore season. So hold me to that. Now, and he's locker room. What he brings to a locker room would certainly be a smart decision for sort of any of those organisations looking for a little bit of veterans in their offense. Now, finally, on the other end of the scale, regarding, I guess, having a good locker room presence and someone that we really thought wouldn't stay where he was. We knew more than likely with the injury that he sustained during the season is, I guess, personality that has been detrimental to his career for all the wrong reasons is obviously Tyreek Hill. Now, look, I've always been a fan of Cheetah. I've nothing bad to say about him other than I don't think he is going to play in the NFL ever again. I don't think anybody is willing to take on a veteran that is unfortunately a toxic addition to your organization. He's in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. He's lost his number one thing, which is that explosiveness and that pace. That knee injury, look, he can rehab it as much as he wants. He's 32 next month. I just don't see anybody willing to take a chance with him. There's obviously been talk about him going back to the Chiefs, but I don't see it happening, unfortunately. So I'm going to go with he doesn't get signed. He doesn't end up on a roster, unfortunately. So that will be and something interesting. Now, next week we'll touch on another core group of free agents. We'll start looking at the running backs that are available across the board and where I think they may end up. Now, like I did start with at the start of the episode, 10 coaching changes across the organisations, either the NFL before that season had even ended, and obviously coaching changes change identity. They re-identify an organisation and where they stand and what sort of team they want to be moving into the future. So I'm just going to touch on three of my most interesting, most under the radar, and the riskiest sort of coaching hires as head coaches across the league. So I'll start off with the most interesting. I think that is Robert Saleh. I think he will succeed there at Tennessee. I think with his defensive mind and the salary cap that they have to go along with that, I think they certainly push towards a plus 500 team. Whether they get to that this year, I don't think. Maybe they'll be around that 6 to 7 win game year, which was certainly a big jump. But I think Cam Ward has shown to the league that he's here to play, and he stays healthy, he'll win himself an MVP. Another hot take of mine. There, episode one, dropping a lot of big calls, but I guess we'll see. So now, obviously, Robert Saleh, his tenure at the Jets wasn't fantastic, and that's not entirely his fault. Instability at quarterback certainly wasn't helpful. And I guess going into a Titans program that is, I guess, sort of at that same echelon of the Jets at the moment will be a difficult situation. But I think the Titans will give him time and they will help him build an organisation around Cam Ward, and they go out and build something special down there in Tennessee. Projection, I think they, like I said, 6 to 7 wins this year, and then start to push for that 8 to 9 for the following season. So I think they are building something special down there in Tennessee. Moving on to, I guess, the most under the radar hire has to be Jesse Minter through to Baltimore. Big defensive background to a big defensive backgrounded organization. I certainly think with the history of the Ravens being quite a defensive team, and Jesse Minter having sort of done the Harbaugh, I guess, system familiarity tour, the tour to Harbaugh, as I'd like to call it, from already being under him at the Ravens in the early 2020s, and then through back to the college system at Michigan, and then through to the Chargers, obviously. He has really learned a lot. He's sat behind some good coaching, and I think they do well if they can stay healthy. Obviously, the last couple of years haven't been great for Baltimore. The cap hit for Lamar is $75.5 million. He needs to get back to that MVP level. They need to stay healthy, and I think they win back the AFC North. So that is my little thoughts on Baltimore and why, I guess, under the radar coach hire. And now finally, the riskiest. Now this isn't riskiest due to, I don't think, his ability to coach. I think he will be a great coach. I think the instability lays with the organisation who hired him, and unfortunately that is the Raiders. Now, that's not to say that they won't run with Kubiak for more than 1 year. Look, they've gone through three for the last 3 years. I think they look at what Kubiak did at Seattle and they hang with him and they give him time. They're going to bring in Fernando Mendoza. They're going to build around him. And I think, hopefully, fingers crossed, Kubiak does good things there at the Las Vegas Raiders. Realistically, I don't think they come too much further up winnings this year. I still think they maybe win 4 to 5, but they're certainly going to be at bottom of the pack team, unfortunately. So we shall see what they do as an organisation. Now, speaking of Fernando Mendoza, obviously we're pretty much all set on him being the number 1 draft pick. He is the best available. We watched him go undefeated. We watched him win a Natty. We watched him win a Heisman. We watched him beat a team in the national championship at their home ground, and they didn't want to touch him, which is interesting. So had a chip on his shoulder, and that play, that run that he made to pretty much ice the game really shows the kind of player that Fernando is. And I think he's a plug and play. You don't sit him. You've got nothing to prove by sitting him. You brought in Gino, you signed him for 75 over 2, and that's failed on you miserably. Nobody's going to touch him now. So there's no point in sitting him behind Gino. He's not going to learn anything. Put him in, keep him healthy, and see what he can do. You've got a bit of cap space, surround him with a little bit of veterans, see what else you can find there in the draft, and work with what you've got. You've got Brock Bowers there, Whether Max Crosby stays, I don't think he does. I think he lands at maybe the Patriots, which would be an interesting pick up for the Patriots. But I certainly think there will be growth at the Las Vegas Raiders this year. Like I said, probably not much, but there will be a little bit, and it'll sort of start to project upwards, which I certainly hope for the Raiders fans here in Australia, let alone back over in the States. Now, moving forward, the next couple of episodes, I'm going to touch on, I guess, each team and what picks they've got, and sort of see what gaps they need to fill and let you know sort of who I think they might take in these positions. So obviously rolling through to pick number 2, that is the New York Jets. Now, we all thought Dante Moore was going to come from college and be the saviour for the Jets. He's decided, no, I'd rather stop myself from getting signed to a $50 million 4-year deal at the Jets. I'll go back to college and put myself into a draft next year, which is certainly harder draft to come out of. I certainly, unless he balls out and wins himself a Heisman and probably a national championship, I don't see him going in the top 5 next year, especially with the quarterbacks that are coming out of next year's draft. So, assuming they all declare, but I certainly don't think he will be as high as highly touted as he was this year. However, based on that, I think they need to go out and get the best available defensive player. And I think that's Caleb Downs from Ohio State. I think he is another plug and play player. They've been weak in that secondary. I believe the Jets have just gone and got Sweat from the Tennessee Titans. And so I think they build around these two guys, a bit of youth, a bit of experience, and they really build up that defensive identity that they once had, and certainly get better from there. He can play on the edge as well, which certainly will help the Jets, and is also, I guess, sorry, no, he won't. He's a safety, and considering they had no interceptions last year, look, you kind of need to go out and get that kid, Caleb Downs. Now, number 3 pick, the Cardinals. This is an interesting decision they have to make here. Kyler and his future. Does anybody take the risk and trade for him? Do you keep him? Do you go out and get a Ty Simpson from Alabama? Or do you look for something next year in that draft class of quarterbacks if you are going to move off Kyler, which I think they do. I don't think it's this year, though. I think Kyler stays another year ultimately, and they build around making a decision for a quarterback next year in the draft, assuming that they get in that sort of top 10 range of draft picks next year. So I think they go out and they get Francis Marigoa from Miami. He, I believe, only allowed 4 sacks in his career there at Miami. So you need to protect either Kyler or your future quarterback there in Arizona. So I think realistically that's where they go. Titans, now Saleh is a defensive coach. We all know that. So I think they realistically probably go out and get a player like Arvell Reese. Again, the best on the board you sort of generally need to take in this situation. You could realistically maybe go out and get Cam Ward some more protection, or you get him a weapon at the wide receiver position. But ultimately, I think they go defense. I think they build up the defense and they go out and find a free agent to bring in someone with a bit of experience and someone that Cam Ward can hit on those deep balls that he has the ability to throw. And finally, the New York Giants. Now, I think you need to go out and you need to get protection for the quarterback in Jackson Dart. So I think you go to Utah and you take Spencer Fano. It's an offensive identity reset there in New York. You've got Matt Nagy coming in as your offensive coach, and I think that's the decision they make, and they go with. That's the top five. We'll go through 6 to 10 next week, but that's where I pretty much stand regarding the draft. So we've spent this episode talking about contracts and roster moves and coaching changes, but sometimes the game reminds us that there are things bigger than all of that. And last week we lost Rondale Moore, unfortunately. I want to really touch base on that quickly. There needs to be a greater emphasis on the health of these players and especially the mental health. This young man had 2 back-to-back season injuries on his knee. He has then obviously had to rehab, and it's not just about the physical rehab, it's the isolation, it's the uncertainty, it's your identity being stripped away. And because this league moves so quickly, if you're not available, they'll find somebody else. And at 25 years of age, that can unfortunately be overwhelming. The league and the Players Association, they spend so much money on the everything else. They spend so much money on the broadcast deals and the facilities. They need to spend money on the mental health. They talk about it, the Players Association, but is this an active or is it a reactive sort of conversation? You can't leave it until you've lost somebody to start to go out and have these conversations with the players and put things in place. It simply isn't good enough. The careers of these players are sometimes quite short, and majority of the time they are, but life after football is long. So football is what we talk about, it's what we analyse, it's what we debate, but at the end of the day, it's still just a game. So rest in peace to Rondale Moore. This has been the Sunday Standard. I'm Anders, and I'll see you next week.